This thing is the largest animal in the world. It doesn't live on land, but in the water. Usually between 700 and 1,000 meters deep, and it surpasses even the great blue whale in size. It has no eyes or mouth, and its incredibly soft body is partly transparent. Okay, I think you got it. Today we're going to explore the gelatinous creatures that live in the deep depths of our oceans. Combine about 98% water, some nerves, a little muscle, and occasionally collagen to bind it. And you already have most of what makes up jellyfish, Ctenophores, or Siphonophores. All of these are truly fascinating creatures, with most abyssal species remaining unknown to us for a long time. It should be noted that those occasionally found on beaches or in our nets almost always reach the surface, now a mushy, shapeless mass after mostly falling apart during the ascent. And to truly be able to grasp all the delicate beauty of these creatures, often bioluminescent, it wasn't until the mid-1980s that we were finally able to go down and observe them evolving in their natural environment. Thanks to the autonomous rover and organizations like Nautilus, MBRI, and the Schmidt Ocean Institute, who, for decades, have regularly descended into the heart of the abyss, and they bring back fabulous images from their research expeditions. Today, we know nearly 2,000 species of gelatinous plankton, and every year, about 50 new species are discovered. Regular deep-sea expeditions have revealed that these translucent creatures play a central role in the oceans. In fact, it is estimated that, taken as a whole, all the gelatinous creatures that we find, these animals, found from surface waters to deep ocean depths, are the most widespread group in the oceans. And even though they lack bones, teeth, or claws, almost all of them are predators that can be formidable. This alien ship, flashing and drifting in the abyssal depths of the eternal black night, is not a jellyfish, but a ctenophore. A gelatinous invertebrate without a brain or eyes, but which is nonetheless capable of sometimes swallowing prey almost as large as itself, whether that prey is from another species or its own. Like jellyfish, ctenophores are common in the abyss and found in all deep oceans, from the poles to the equator, and their size can range from individuals that require a microscope to be seen to impressive specimens over 2 meters long. Most of these creatures, which use rows of cilia to move, visible here, create rainbow patterns. Unlike jellyfish, they don't catch their prey by poisoning them because their tentacles don't sting, but are covered with sticky cells, which are the perfect embodiment. Bad news for the small crustaceans and larvae that are unlucky enough to touch them. This species, known as the sea gooseberry, has tentacles nearly 20 times longer than its body. And with its tentacles covered in bioluminescent filaments, it vaguely looks like a Christmas ornament. But these garlands aren't gifts. Covered in adhesive cells, they are drifting nets that trap small animals in the current. So, behind the mesmerizing beauty of almost all these luminous creatures, there hides an insidious danger. For those who are deceived, drawn in as if hypnotized by these fabulous patterns. Ctenophores are often synonymous with death. Sometimes, certain species that lack tentacles even have a mouth full of tiny poisonous hooks, which they use to paralyze their prey. While most Ctenophores are transparent, some display surprising colors. This one, known as bloody belly and observed at great depths by the research teams of the MBRI Institute, feeds mainly on bioluminescent animals. To prevent its stomach from flashing internally, it swapped transparency for a deep red color, a color that diffuses very poorly in the water column, and that, in a way, gives it a cloak of invisibility. By allowing it to hide its last agonizing meal here, if we are able to perceive the red color of this fascinating creature, it's only thanks to the lights of the submersible observing it. Here is a Venus's girdle, a species of ctenophore whose iridescent and transparent body takes the shape of a flattened luminous ribbon. It can be found in almost every ocean around the world, from the surface of the waves to the very great depths. It was by seeing these ribbons of light and jelly undulating against the black background of the ocean, sometimes more than a meter long and extremely fragile, that James Cameron was inspired. The concept for some abyss movie creatures? Maybe even stranger than Ctenophores, here is a Siphonophore. This organism, related to jellyfish, is not a single animal. It's thousands, sometimes millions, that all come together to form a colony. So, and contrary to what your eyes tell you, this is not a single creature. Here, structured around a long central cord, is a myriad of tiny, different animals called zooids, which work together and share the biological functions. They build in groups and by budding, creating specialized organs so that together, they make the siphonophore function as a single superorganism. Within these vast colonies, each zooid has a specific function. Some, responsible for propulsion, build swimming bells that, filled with gas, are used for locomotion and act as floats, while others play the role of the stomach and are dedicated exclusively to digestion, or serve as bait, and they build and deploy curtains of stinging tentacles, which make siphonophores formidable predators. For the small creatures drawn to these lights, life may end quickly, as thousands of fireworks come from bioluminescent toxic tentacles. There's no need for powerful jaws, muscular strength, or sharp teeth when you know how to synthesize powerful poisons in this strange gelatinous assembly. Whether the zooids are assigned to feeding, defense, or reproduction, they all work for the common good and share resources, the fruits of their catch, to keep the entire colonial animal functioning. No zooid can survive alone. So, those in charge of digestion share the nutrients, the energy they recover, which is then distributed throughout the entire lung colony. Colonial animals have major advantages. When they're bitten, Siphonophores can get rid of a part of their body without risking death. All they have to do is rebuild the damaged or lost organ to keep on living. Most Siphonophores simply filter food by capturing plankton in the water. These long, translucent chains drifting in the open ocean currents can, when large enough, feed on small crustaceans, fish, and even other Siphonophores. Because even if taken individually, each zooid is tiny, often less than a millimeter long. In groups, they can manage to build truly gigantic assemblies. Do you remember the organism I showed you at the beginning of this episode? Well, it's a siphonophore that looks like a string coiled in a spiral and is probably about 50 meters long. And it also has more than 300 stomachs. And I have to say, I really like it. The idea that what is probably the largest colonial animal in the world is also extremely fragile and able, if something bad happens, to rebuild itself. Some Siphonophore species can swim but may briefly rest on the ocean floor, resembling a carnivorous flower with deadly petals. Taking advantage of the current, they filter the food that comes to them in the flow. Siphonophores are not the only colonial organisms that exist. In the deep sea, these translucent tube-shaped structures are pyrosomes, just like Siphonophores. There are thousands of individual zooids here, except that these are almost identical to each other and are very little specialized. Once gathered in a group, they form these hollow structures that allow them to trap and digest prey inside their deadly traps. Exceptionally, very large pyrosomes can even be observed near the surface by divers. Who should play the lottery? With so many flan-textured creatures, it's time to discuss the most famous jellyfish. Gelatinous animals, mostly composed of the same element as their environment. Deep-sea jellyfish may be even more fascinating than those near the surface, because the pockets of moisture that have been discovered in the depths of the abyss have shapes, colors, and sizes of truly astonishing variety. Some jellyfish are bioluminescent, while others have become nearly opaque instead of transparent. They exist all over the world, and which have been built and constructed all over the world, and which have been built all over the world and constructed all over the world. Built all over the world, and which have been built all over the world, and which have been built all over the world, and which have been built all over the world. El Pythagoras, Rewind Tourist, etc. The West exists. Despite everything, these muscleless creatures rely heavily on currents to move. Like hot air balloons, they can't fully control their fate. But don't worry about them, because behind these gentle and nonchalant movements, there are also predators here that can be terrible. Jellyfish have existed for at least 500 million years, which is longer than any other animal with multiple organs. So what, don't they? No brain, heart, eyes, or spinal cord. Just a basic nervous system around their bell lets them sense currents. It's that they have a number of secret weapons on their side. Here too, these bubbles of water and life can mean death for those who come into contact with them. The transparent tentacles that trail beneath the bell and allow them to catch plankton, crustaceans, or fish are lined with harpoons. And the epidermis of jellyfish is often covered with nematocysts, cells that contain tiny elastic arrows, coiled, poisoned, and ready to be released to inject their venom and thus stun or kill. Add to that the fact that some jellyfish can shrink by feeding on their own tissue when food is scarce, and you start to understand how. These sacs, composed of 95% water, have spread throughout the world's oceans, from the surface to the deepest abyss. Many species of jellyfish living in the pitch-black night of the deep ocean are also bioluminescent. This jellyfish, about 15 centimeters in size, called atolla, is frequently encountered by rovers at depths of more than 500 meters. And when it feels threatened, it starts to produce light, and its bell begins to emit flashes of red and blue. Such a display of bioluminescence serves both to scare off its predators and to expose them, to point them out, or rather, to point them out with its tentacles, because in the near-total darkness that reigns in the abyss, where these jellyfish live, starting to blink and shine is a way to shed light. Those who try to swallow you and, as a side effect, attract the possible predators of your attackers lurking nearby to swoop down on them. It's kind of like the equivalent of a deafening anti-theft alarm. Except that here, in the darkness, the defense method isn't making sound but producing light. Sometimes, the creatures that come to pierce the surrounding darkness with their glow seem downright unreal. Here, the rover's cameras came across a jellyfish whose internal parts, where nutrients circulate, are outlined through the transparent bell by bioluminescence. To fully appreciate the hypnotic beauty of these gelatinous beings, turn off the rover's headlights. And there, ephemeral stars are born, splashing the dark ocean night with deep pinks and reds. The first time the Velotilis teams encountered Dipstaria enigmatica, they thought they were looking at a whale placenta or a garbage bag, before the envelope started to move and change shape, and realized that they were actually facing a most astonishing creature. Because Dipstaria enigmatica is a giant jellyfish more than 1/2 meter wide, with a transparent diaphanous bell and no stinging tentacles. And to feed itself, it closes its immense, expansive gelatinous sheets to trap prey, often tiny, that drift in the water. Almost all of the Dipstaria that have been observed in the deep ocean, between 600 and 1,700 meters below the surface, have sheltered, hidden under their veil, a kind of companion animal, a small bright red isopod that made its home inside the bell. Whether this unlikely resident is a parasite or beneficial remains unknown, but it is always present. Impressive as it is, Dipstaria is still small among giant jellyfish, especially compared to Stigma's Iomedusa gigantea. With a head over 1 meter long, it is among the largest invertebrate ocean predators ever discovered. Captured by an Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute submarine at 1,000 meters, this ghostly opaque apparition is immortalized without tentacles. Instead, it has 4 gigantic scarf-like arms that slither and undulate, following the shapes of the current to envelop their prey. Strangely, inside this dangerous jellyfish, something is hidden among the black ribbons, which can often be over 10 meters long. A small deep-sea fish that has clearly found a particularly effective refuge there to hide itself. Whether it is exceptionally almost as dark as the waters in which it lives, or whether it shines with 1,000 lights. All these jellyfish with their sinuous movements are an invitation for the fish to come and eat. Moon, which are in some ways the worst incarnation of evil, a living nightmare if you're a jellyfish. Often seen as deep as 600 meters in tropical and temperate oceans, these massive bony fish can easily exceed a ton, with the largest growing even bigger. The 2,700 kilo ones are among the biggest gelatinous organism consumers on Earth. A 250 kilo sunfish is estimated to eat about 100 kilos of jellyfish daily to meet its calorie needs. The problem is that in terms of energy intake, eating a jellyfish is pretty much like drinking a glass of water with a drop of oil in it. Jellyfish, Ctenophores, and Siphonophores invite us to consider what drifts beneath the blurry surfaces below. For a long time, these ethereal organisms were sought, collected from the depths, and brought to the surface intact. It was like catching air or bubbles in your hand, and they all inevitably ended up bursting into pieces as soon as they were taken out of their liquid, high-pressure environment. Because just as going down to such great depths without being protected by several centimeters of metal would mean certain death for us, for these translucent abyssal creatures, the surface is hostile. But for a few decades now, we have exceptionally managed to collect some alive and bring them up in pressurized containers in order to better understand them. Even so, descending remains the best way to study and observe these fragile and fantastic beings, made of gelatin and sometimes of light. You may be glad to hear that globally, jellyfish, Ctenophores, Siphonophores, and cephalopods are generally doing well. Overfishing removes many predators and competitors of all fish species. And then, while many marine animals are struggling to adapt to the rising temperature and acidity of the oceans, these brainless organisms are adapting well to the new situation. They're thriving so much in some areas that they're becoming a nuisance, not bad for species with nearly as much water as lettuce. If you enjoyed this episode, consider sharing it and subscribing. You can support me on Typee and find ultra-compact content on my Instagram.